Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. Oliver Thompson stood behind his living room window, his heart in his mouth as he stared out. His wife Sophia, the woman he's been in love with for 3 years, is currently kneeling in the passenger seat of an expensive sedan, passionately serving the man inside. The man, Oliver knows all too well, Frederick Blackwood, Sophia's premarital boyfriend, a pretentious upper-class asshole. Anger burned in Oliver's chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. He was glad he had done 2 smart things in the past, and now, he needed to make one more smart decision. Unfortunately, his cell phone was being repaired, and he didn't have a camera around to record the sickening scene. Oliver knew that by the time he found his camera, this exciting scene would be over. Time was running out, and in less than an hour, he and Sophia would be going to her father's house for dinner. Oliver decides to take action and teach the adulterous couple a lesson while planning a way back for himself. He put on gloves and quickly unscrewed all 3 tire valves on Frederick's car, deflated them, and put them back on. He then pulled a rubber mallet from the garage and hid behind a nearby bush to bide his time. It wasn't long before Frederick came out of the house in a panic. As he bends down to check on the flat tire, Oliver approaches silently and hits Frederick hard in the back of the head with a rubber mallet. The blow wasn't enough to kill, but it was enough to render Frederick unconscious. Oliver quickly searched Frederick's pockets and took the car keys and wallet. He threw the car keys far enough into the nearby woods that they flew far enough away that he feared they would never be found. As he looked through his wallet, Oliver couldn't help but grimace. "I can't believe this smug rich guy only has $28 in cash on him," he muttered to himself while removing Frederick's credit card and driver's license. Oliver wiped any marks that might have been left on the hammer with a bleach-soaked cloth, returned the rubber mallet to the garage, and then placed the evidence-stained cloth and Frederick's identification in a plastic bag. He ran quickly to his own car parked a few hundred meters away, a distance sufficient to ensure that Frederick hadn't noticed his car before. Oliver's mind raced as he drove to his father-in-law's house. He stopped as he passed a 7-Eleven convenience store. There are one of the few public phone booths still in use. Oliver pulled off his suit jacket and put on a plain baseball cap and a pair of mirrored sunglasses before heading toward the phone booth. He stopped a teenage girl coming out of a convenience store, gave her Frederick's $28, and asked her to call 911 to anonymously report a person passed out in the driveway of 15 Terrace Avenue. He then threw the plastic bag containing the evidence into the dumpster next to the 7-Eleven. With that accomplished, Oliver accelerates toward the home of his father-in-law, Chester Grant. He arrived 10 minutes early, mentally mulling over his next plan. Oliver doesn't like Chester, and the arrogant old man only reluctantly accepts him because Oliver is the best salesman in his insurance company. In Chester's eyes, Sophia's marriage to someone like Oliver, who comes from an ordinary family, is simply self-defeating. However, if judged on a moral level, Oliver is the one who is high on Sophia and Chester. Chester values punctuality, so Oliver picks up the landline and dials Sophia's number. "Hi, Sophia. Where are you? Your father has gotten a little impatient," Oliver asked with feigned concern. Sophia on the other end of the line sounded panicked. "Oh, I'm sorry I'm late. There's been a crime outside our house and the police are here." "Yes, officer, this is my husband Oliver." "No, you don't need to speak to him." Oliver hears an argument on the other side of the phone, and apparently Sophia is covering the microphone with her hand. Suddenly, the phone was answered by a different person. "This is Detective Burns. Is this Mr. Oliver Thompson?" "Yes, officer." "What happened? Is my wife okay?" Oliver asked, feigning surprise. "Mr. Thompson, your wife is physically fine. However, a man named Frederick Blackwood was assaulted in your driveway and has been taken away by ambulance. His car was just towed." Oliver raised his voice to make sure Chester could hear his angry voice. "What? What is Frederick Blackwood doing in my house? He's Sophia's ex-boyfriend. Did he come here to cheat on Sophia? I hope that asshole got his ass kicked enough." Detective Burns warned Oliver to watch his language, but Oliver continued to rant. "Can you guys take my wife to the hospital for a vaginal swab? to see if there's any DNA from that asshole? Burns explained that they could not compel such an examination unless Sophia volunteered or claimed to have been sexually assaulted. Oliver continued to press for detailed photographs to prove whether Sophia had been assaulted, and Burns agreed to the request. Finally, Oliver asks to speak with Sophia. "Look, honey," he said coldly, "you either go to the hospital right now and get tested to prove that you didn't sleep with that asshole, or I'm going to file for divorce right now." "Fuck you," Sophia screamed. Oliver hung up. Chester was pale and angry. "What's going on here?" he growled. Oliver calmly replies, "Well, Chester, it looks like I caught your baby girl cheating on you with that scumbag Frederick Blackwood. I'm divorcing her." Shocked, Chester stammered, "You can't talk about me and my daughter like that. I should fire you." The phone rang again. Oliver knew it was Sophia calling, and he simply lifted the phone and slammed it back down hard. "Can you write down what you just said?" Oliver asked excitedly, pulling out a pen and notepad from the kitchen counter and handing it to Chester. "It's going to break my heart not to be able to make money for egomaniacs like you anymore, but I'll get through it." Chester is furious and angry, mumbling about how Oliver is an uneducated and ungrateful guy and how he's glad to be rid of Oliver. Finally, he wrote on a piece of paper, "Oliver Thompson is fired as of today," and signed and dated his name. "Thanks," Oliver said, picking up the dismissal letter and heading for the door. Behind them, the phone was still ringing incessantly, as if it were the soundtrack to this farce. Oliver knows in his heart of hearts that his behavior might make people think he's crazy. However, if one knows more about the inner workings, one may be able to understand his intentions. The two wise things he mentions in the first paragraph refer to the prenuptial agreement he signed with Sophia and the employment contract he simultaneously signed with Chester's company. Oliver succeeded in convincing Sophia and Chester to add a clause to each of the two contracts. Prenuptial agreements are reciprocal. If either party inflicts bodily harm on the other during the marriage or has sexual relations with another person, the breaching party will be penalized. For Oliver, he would receive $500,000 in compensation from Sophia's trust fund, and then the parties would split the other assets equally. For Sophia, if Oliver defaults, she will receive 85% of the assets. As to the employment contract, if Oliver is fired or demoted in a way that results in a reduction in earnings or duties of more than 10%, the non-compete clause in the contract is void. While Oliver currently has no hard evidence of Sophia's infidelity, he has gathered considerable circumstantial evidence. His middle-class-born friend and lawyer Ron told him that the circumstantial evidence gave them a decent chance if they could find a suitable judge. Ron also advises Oliver on what he should and shouldn't do in his upcoming divorce proceedings. Oliver was told to refrain from closing accounts, transferring funds or securities, canceling credit cards, etc., until the court issued an order freezing assets. Acting in haste could give the judge a bad impression of him and jeopardize the case. Immediately after leaving Chester's, Oliver buys a disposable cell phone and calls Ron's office. "Why are you still in the office at 7 p.m. on a Friday night?" Oliver asked. Ron smiled and replied, "To serve a poor sap like you." "What's wrong?" Oliver explains to Ron in detail everything that has happened since he arrived at Chester's house. Ron gave blunt advice: "Don't go home tonight, go to a hotel and stay there. Remember to keep your receipts and make sure you get caught on the hotel security cameras. Tomorrow morning, I will arrange for a private investigator to accompany you home and leave a recording device there. In the meantime, I'll look into this Frederick business. On Monday, I'll start the divorce proceedings." Oliver followed instructions. The next morning, he returned home with the private investigator. The PI enters through the side door, while Oliver enters through the front door. "Sophia, I'll just come back and get some things and go," Oliver shouted. Sophia quickly came down the stairs and questioned furiously, "How dare you accuse me of cheating and tell my dad to fire you? You asshole. Did you do a vaginal swab?" Oliver asked sarcastically. "Go to hell." Sophia began to scream. Oliver interrupted her. "Then we have nothing more to say. I'll pack my things and leave." Sophia is so engrossed in verbally abusing Oliver that she doesn't notice the private investigator's presence. Detectives photographed Sophia's face and bare skin and certified that she did not have any cuts or bruises. Oliver locks the bedroom door. ignores Sophia's pounding and yelling at the door, and begins to gather his clothes and valuables. He checked the sheets for any suspicious marks, but Sophia had obviously been smart enough to change them, possibly having burned them or soaked them in bleach. After packing up, Oliver walks past Sophia and out the front door without a word. The private investigator used a telephoto lens to photograph Sophia screaming on the steps outside. While Oliver and Sophia were upstairs, the detective had placed a long-lasting battery-operated voice-activated recording device in the kitchen. "How did the photos and video go?" Oliver asked as he drove away. "Perfect," replied the private investigator. "It's easy to see that she doesn't have any injuries on her." The decision to place voice-activated recording devices later proved to be a stroke of genius. Later that day, they captured Sophia's conversation with her friend Lyla Castle. Sophia makes Lyla hit her in the face and arms and creates small cuts on her arms and neck. Once that was done, the girls went to the clinic together to document the cuts and bruises and take pictures. While Sophia and Lyla are at the clinic, Oliver and the PI return to the house to pick up anything else they need and retrieve the recording equipment. As Ron predicted, they filed an adultery suit on Monday. By the end of the week, Sophia countersued Oliver for physically abusing her. The same day the divorce papers were served on Sophia, Oliver went to see Detective Burns after retrieving his repaired cell phone. "Mr. Thompson, where were you when the Frederick Blackwood incident occurred?" Burns asked, getting right to the point. Oliver crossed his arms and replied warily, "Sounds like you're treating me like a suspect." "We do have evidence linking you to the scene," Burns continued. "Then you should arrest me, because I'm not going to say anything else. I want to see my lawyer," Oliver said firmly. "Do you really want to do this? You look suspicious." Burns tried to apply pressure. "I remember when I asked to see a lawyer, you couldn't ask me another question, but you just asked another one. Either arrest me or I'm leaving now," Oliver said firmly while standing up and getting ready to leave. Detective Burns sighed. "Okay, Mr. Thompson, you can go now, but we'll be in touch." Oliver didn't answer and walked right out of the police station. His heart was beating fast, but he remained outwardly calm. He knew that the real battle had just begun. Oliver leaves the police station and goes straight to Ron's office. Pushing the door open, he found the lawyer staring intently at the computer screen. "Just in time," Ron said. "We just got some interesting stuff." Oliver sat down and felt his heart race. "What is it?" Ron turned the computer screen and played a recording. It's a conversation between Sophia and Lyla. "God, Lyla, you've got to help me," Sophia says on the recording. "I need some bruises that look like I've been beaten." "Sophia, are you sure you want to do this?" Lyla said hesitantly. "It's perjury. I have no choice. Come on, hurry up." Then came a dull thud and Sophia's feigned cry of pain. The look on Oliver's face changed from shock to determination as he listened. "This is perfect, Ron. We got her." Ron nods. "True, but we need more. I've arranged for a private investigator to follow her." "Think back. Was there anything suspicious before?" Oliver thinks for a moment. "She works overtime a lot, but there's no overtime pay on her paycheck. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and she's not in bed. Also, she's always staring at her cell phone lately." Ron made a note of these. "Good leads. Let's keep investigating." At that moment, Ron's assistant comes in and hands him a file. Ron smiled after a quick glance. "As luck would have it," he said, "the judge agreed to freeze your joint assets. Sophia can't touch any money right now." Oliver breathed a sigh of relief. "Great. She can't use my money for the lawsuit." Ron continued, "It's going to be tough coming up. Sophia, they're going to discredit you. Stay calm and don't do anything stupid." Oliver nodded. "Understood. I'll be careful." Just then, Ron's phone rang. He answered and his face changed. "Lyla Castle wants to see us," Ron said. "She says she wants to confess everything." Oliver felt a wave of vertigo. He and Ron exchanged a look, both realizing this could be the moment of truth. "When do we see her?" Oliver asked. Ron looks at the table. "She said she could come right away. Let's wait for her here." A few minutes later, Lyla walked into the office. She looked exhausted, her eyes red and swollen. "Lyla," Ron said, "thanks for coming. Have a seat and tell us what you have to say." Lyla took a deep breath. I've come to admit that I helped Sophia falsify evidence. Oliver never hit her. Those bruises, I made them all. Oliver felt a rush of strong emotions come over him, but stayed silent. Why? Ron asked. Lyla looked up with tears in her eyes. Sophia is my best friend. She says Oliver treats her badly and controls her. I'm just trying to help her. Ron turned on the tape recorder. Can you repeat that? It's important to our case. Lyla hesitates and then nods. As she repeats the confession, Oliver feels a strange relief. The recording ends and Ron turns off the machine. Thank you, Lyla. You did the right thing. As Lyla prepares to leave, Oliver suddenly asks, "Where's Sophia now?" Lyla turned, sympathy in her eyes. She's with James. James? Who's James? Asked Oliver, confused. Lyla bit her lip. James Watkins, a new client of your firm. They have been together for a couple months now. Oliver felt a wave of vertigo. All the clues suddenly strung together. Overtime, late-night absences, an obsession with cell phones. Ron immediately followed up with, "Can you tell us more about James Watkins?" Just as Lyla is about to open her mouth, Oliver's cell phone rings. He looked away and turned white. "It's Sophia," he said, his voice uncertain. Ron and Lyla both held their breath. Oliver took a deep breath and hit the answer button. "Hey, Sophia," he said, trying to control his voice. "What's up?" "Oliver, we need to talk." Sophia's voice came from the other end of the line. Oliver glanced at Ron, and the lawyer nodded for him to continue. "Well, what do you want to talk about?" "Not on the phone," Sophia said eagerly. "Can we meet?" "At the cafe where we had our first date." "In an hour." Oliver agreed. Hanging up, he turned to Ron and Lyla. Ron acted immediately. "It could be a trap. Take this with you." He hands Oliver a small recording device. Oliver nods, then says to Lyla, "Thank you for telling us the truth." Lyla forced a smile. "I hope it makes up for some of the damage." An hour later, Oliver was sitting in the cafe. Sophia walks in, looking haggard. "Thanks for coming," Sophia said softly, sitting down. Oliver just nodded. "What are you trying to say?" Sophia took a deep breath. "I want to reconcile." "Why this sudden need for reconciliation?" Oliver asked. "I'm tired," Sophia said, "of this lawsuit, these lies. I've had enough. I know I'm doing it wrong. You know Lyla has confessed, right?" Sophia turned white. "Yes, I know. That's why I want to reconcile." "What about James?" Oliver asked calmly. Panic flashed in Sophia's eyes. "James, that was just a mistake. A mistake that lasted months?" Sophia looks down. "I'm sorry, Oliver. Really sorry." Oliver looked at her deeply. "The trust between us is broken. Do you understand?" Sophia nods, her eyes tearing up. "I know. I just want it to end peacefully. I need to discuss it with my attorney," Oliver said. Just then, Oliver noticed James Watkins standing across the street. "It seems your mistakes aren't over, are they?" Oliver pointed out. Sophia looks out the window in a panic. "Oliver, I can explain." "No," Oliver interrupted her, standing up. "I think I've got the information I need." Back in his car, Oliver immediately calls Ron and describes the meeting in detail. Ron's voice was full of excitement. "It's perfect. We have more leverage now. But be careful, Sophia may still have a trick up her sleeve." Oliver nodded. "What next?" Ron thinks for a moment. "We need more evidence of Sophia's infidelity. The photographs taken by the private investigator were useful, but more direct evidence would have been better." "I see," Oliver said. "I'll remain vigilant." Just then, Oliver gets a text message. It was from Lyla. "I have more to tell you. About Sophia and James. Can we meet tomorrow?" Oliver's heart is racing. "Ron, Lyla says she has more information. Should we see her?" Ron contemplates for a moment. "See, but be careful. Bring a recording device and I'll arrange for someone to watch from a distance." The next day, Oliver waits for Lyla in a quiet cafe. When she walks in, Oliver notices that she looks nervous. "Thanks for coming, Oliver," Lyla said, sitting down. "There's something I have to tell you." Oliver nodded. "I'm listening." Lyla took a deep breath and began to tell what she knew. about how Sophia and James' betrayal began, how they conspired behind Oliver's back, and even planned how to get more property in the divorce case. When Lyla finished, Oliver felt a wave of vertigo. The information was more shocking than he had expected. "Why are you telling me this now?" Oliver asked. Lyla lowered her head. "I feel guilty. Oliver, I've been helping Sophia cover up the truth. But now I realize it was wrong. You deserve to know the truth." Oliver nodded and looked at Lyla gratefully. "Thank you, Lyla. It's important to our case." Immediately after leaving the cafe, Oliver contacted Ron to update him on the new information. Ron listened and said, "That's great, Oliver. With Lyla's testimony and the evidence we already have, our chances of winning are greatly increased." Oliver felt a twinge of relief, but also some sadness. He couldn't help but think of the good times he and Sophia had had, and now it had devolved into this. "Ron," Oliver asked, "do you think it's all worth it?" Ron was silent for a moment, then said, "Oliver, sometimes the truth hurts, but living a lie is even more painful. You're doing the right thing." Oliver nodded, feeling a new surge of determination come over him. Whatever happens next, he's ready to face the truth and start a new chapter in his life. Oliver and Ron sit in the courtroom, waiting for the trial to begin. Judge Moore enters the courtroom and all rise. "Please be seated, everyone," Judge Moore said, "as we continue the divorce case of Thompson versus Thompson." Ron stands up. "Your Honor, we have new evidence to present." Sophia's lawyer, McAfee, immediately objected. "Your Honor, this is an impromptu submission of evidence that we have not had time to review." Judge Moore looked at both attorneys. "Mr. Botts, why is this evidence being presented now?" Ron explained, "This evidence was recently obtained and is directly relevant to the case. We ask the court to accept this new evidence." Moore thinks for a moment, then nods. "I'll allow the submission. Mr. McAfee, I'll give you time to review the evidence." Ron began to show evidence. First up is Oliver's recording of Sophia admitting to cheating. Then there's a photo of Sophia and James taken by a private investigator. As this evidence is presented, Oliver notices Sophia's face turning pale. She whispers and talks to McAfee, looking flustered. Ron continued, "Finally, we're going to call a key witness." Lyla walked into the courtroom and sat on the witness stand. She looked nervous but determined. "Ms. Castle," Ron began to inquire, "please tell the court what you know about Sophia Thompson's relationship with James Watkins." Lyla took a deep breath and then began to tell what she knew. She describes how Sophia began her affair with James and how she plans to acquire more property in the divorce case. When Lyla testifies, Oliver sees anger and betrayal flash in Sophia's eyes. But soon that expression was replaced by one of deep remorse. McAfee attempted to challenge Lyla's credibility on cross-examination, but Lyla's testimony remained consistent throughout. Finally, Judge Moore said, "In light of the new evidence, I need time to consider the verdict." The court is adjourned for 2 days. Walking out of the courtroom, Oliver feels both relieved and exhausted. Ron patted him on the shoulder. "Well done, Oliver. The odds are stacked against us." Just then Sophia approached them. "Oliver, can we talk?" she said softly. Oliver hesitates and looks to Ron. Ron nodded. "Go ahead, but be careful. Don't say anything that might jeopardize the case." Oliver followed Sophia aside. Sophia has tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Oliver," she said. "I know it's probably too late to apologize, but I really am. I shouldn't have done that to you." Oliver looked at her deeply. "Why, Sophia? We used to love each other so much." Sophia shook her head. "I don't know. Maybe out of boredom, maybe out of weakness. But that's no excuse. I hurt you, and I'll always regret it." Oliver felt a wave of mixed emotions rush over him. Anger, sadness, disappointment, but also a hint of relief. "Thank you for apologizing, Sophia," he concluded. "But you're right, it is indeed too late." Sophia nodded and wiped her eyes. "I understand. I just want you to know that I'm really sorry." Oliver turns away and goes back to Ron. Ron looked at him with concern. "Are you okay?" Oliver took a deep breath. "I'll be fine. Let's get this over with." 2 days later, they were back in court again. Judge Moore read his sentence. Considering all of the evidence, this court finds that the defendant, Sophia Thompson, was guilty of marital infidelity. Pursuant to the prenuptial agreement entered into by the parties, plaintiff Oliver Thompson is entitled to $500,000 in damages, as well as 60% of the community property. When Judge Moore announced the verdict, Oliver felt a wave of relief. This nightmare experience is finally over. Out of the courtroom, the sun was shining. Ron asked, "What's next?" Oliver looked away and smiled. "Maybe it's time to start a new life." Just then, Oliver notices Lyla standing not far away, seemingly waiting for him. "Go ahead," Ron said. "I think she has something to say to you." Oliver walks towards Lyla, his mind racing. Whatever happens next, he knows he's ready for a new beginning. Oliver walks towards Lyla, his heart beating slightly faster. "Hi," Lyla said softly. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." Oliver nodded. "I'll be fine. Thank you for telling the truth in court." Lyla gave a small smile. "This is what I owe you. I'm sorry I helped Sophia cheat on you before." "That's all in the past," Oliver said. "And the important thing now is to move on." Just then, Oliver's cell phone rings. It's his boss Chester calling. "Thompson," Chester's voice sounded serious. "We need to talk. Come to my office." Oliver hangs up, says goodbye to Lyla, and heads straight to Chester's office. Pushing the door open, Oliver found Chester sitting behind his large desk with a somber expression. "Sit down, Thompson," Chester said. Oliver sits down and waits for Chester to speak. Chester took a deep breath. "I just heard about the outcome of your divorce case with Sophia." Oliver nods and stays silent. "I have to say I'm very disappointed in this whole situation," Chester continued. "Not only for Sophia, but for you as well." Oliver raised an eyebrow. "To me?" Chester nods. "You're bringing personal issues to work. It affects the company's image." Oliver felt a surge of anger rise up. "Wait, I was betrayed and you think it's my fault?" Chester waved his hand. "I'm not talking about right or wrong. I'm talking about how this affects the company." Oliver stood up. "So, what do you want?" Chester looks Oliver straight in the eye. "I think you should resign. For the good of the company." Oliver froze for a moment, then suddenly laughed. "You know what, Chester? I was just about to do that." He pulled a letter from his pocket. "This is my resignation. I was going to wait a few days before giving it to you. But since you brought it up..." Chester took the letter in surprise. "You're ready?" Oliver nodded. "Once the divorce was finalized, I decided it was time for a change. A new beginning, you know?" Chester was silent for a moment, then said, "Well, Thompson, good luck." Oliver turned to leave the office, feeling a sense of relief he'd never felt before. Stepping out of the building, he took a deep breath of fresh air. He took out his cell phone and dialed Ron's number. "Ron," he said, "I quit." "Really?" Ron sounded surprised. "Are you okay?" Oliver laughed. "Never felt better. Listen, I was thinking, maybe it's time to start that project we discussed." Ron's voice was full of excitement. "You mean start your own company?" "That's right," Oliver said. "I've got some new ideas. Do you have time to meet and discuss them?" "Sure," Ron said. 7 p.m., usual place?" "Perfect," Oliver said. "I'll see you there." Hanging up the phone, Oliver looks out at the busy street. Despite all he had been through in the past few months, he felt hopeful at the moment. Just then he noticed Lyla across the street. She was about to get in her car and leave. Oliver hesitated, then shouted, "Lyla!" Lyla turned and looked at him in surprise. Oliver ran across the street. "Do you have time for a cup of coffee?" Lyla smiles and nods. "Sure." As they walked toward the nearby cafe, Oliver felt a strange sense of calm. He knows the future is full of uncertainty, but he's ready for new challenges. Sitting down, Lyla looked at him curiously. "So, what's the next plan?" Oliver thinks deeply for a moment, then gives a genuine smile. "A new beginning. A completely fresh start." Lyla raised her coffee cup. "To new beginnings." Oliver raised his glass as well, clinking it gently with hers. As the sunlight poured through the window on them, Oliver felt a sense of hope and excitement that had been missing for a long time. Whatever the future would bring, he was ready for it. Because sometimes, endings also mean new beginnings. And this time, he was determined to make the most of it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.